be sharing a whole lot of information to all those that have registered. So we will get some information out to you. You'll get copies of PowerPoints and those kind of things as well. Before we introduce our wonderful guest today, I also want to obviously introduce you to who we are at EducationUSA. We're a US Department of State office. In Australia, we're located at the 3 US consulates here, and that's Melbourne, Sydney and Perth. And in Melbourne, I will look after you all in Melbourne and Victoria, also South Australia, Tasmania and the Northern Territory. So what we want you to know today is that we are that resource that can certainly help you through the process. Whenever you're looking at studying at a US college, I think you're doing it for a couple of reasons. One is the flexibility, the atmosphere, the living on campus, that whole campus life experience. And obviously the people in this room today, it is really the student energy between doing your academic studies and also being the best athlete you can be as well. Again, there are certain pathways that you can go to US colleges, and we're going to talk about those today. The associate pathway is the 2-year colleges, and we're going to talk about the 4-year college pathways at an undergraduate degree as well. In regards to US college sports associations, there are 3. They are the NCAA, and we are obviously having great representation here today from both the NAIA and the National Junior Collegiate Athletic Association, which is the 2-year. And I'm going to have them talk a little bit more about that in great depth in a minute. In regards to finding the right fit, it really is often about 3 things. It's about that athletic fit, and obviously you want to be playing on wherever you go. It's that academic fit, so that your academic rigor can meet the requirements of where you're also going. And obviously it's the financial fit. Now, don't forget, if you go to an Australian university, that costs money as well, that you have to pay back in a HECS debt. So sometimes it's about how that finance match works. And you can obviously scholarship stack and get a sports scholarship and get an academic scholarship. And we're certainly going to talk a little bit more about that shortly as well. In regards to high school, your grades are going to be really important from years 9 till 12. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. And we'll talk a little bit about the importance of obviously being recruited and getting a sports profile out there. Now, we're not going to touch a whole lot about that tonight because we really want to come back to the opportunities first, but we will certainly be supplying some information that will help you through all of these steps. In regards to courses from the NCAA, they have things called the 16 core courses. We are not going to touch on that much tonight, but I will let you know that the process can be really simple. And we are going to send you these slides that are not coming through very well about how those 16 cores work. It is a really simple process in working with your schools and your career practitioners. And there are some really great resources that will make sure that you can match your course titles with what you're doing at school as well. So if that's something that you really want to learn more about, then make sure that you connect with us after this session as well. So we are now going to look at planning the next part of the presentation. We're going to see how we bring up the next slide. You have this checklist in your bags, and we will provide checklists that help you and simplify the process and how you go about doing that. We are going to encourage you to listen to the podcast Graduated in the USA that we will send you, and it's 6 episodes. And if you listen to that and actually like what you hear, I think it will encourage you to continue to do these steps about getting to a US college. We're going to hand it back over to Saeed, I think is going to go. So, Saeed?
Hello, everyone. My name is Saeed Halim, and I'm coming to you from the NAIA, or the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics. While we're getting our presentations pulled up, I just wanted to give you a brief personal overview and professional overview of myself. So I've been with the NAIA for around 11 months, and my title is I'm the International Team Lead Manager. So I handle all international eligibility decisions for international students looking to pursue NAIA athletic eligibility. From a personal perspective, I am a former student athlete myself. I've played soccer in high school or secondary school, and I, like you guys, I've been in your shoes before, so I've gone through the recruiting process from grades 10 to 12. And I've spoken with coaches at the NCAA level, at the NAIA level, and at the junior college level as well. So I'd like to express some gratitude to EducationUSA and the Carey School for having me here today. So a brief overview of the NAIA, we consider ourselves the experts in small college athletics. The typical profile of an NAIA school is around 1,400 students. So that is what the normal enrollment or size of an NAIA school kind of looks like. Our motto is that we intentionally teach character and prepare student athletes to be tomorrow's leaders. One of the ways in which we do that is that all of our NAIA coaches, before they are able to coach at the NAIA level, participate in a character-based coaching program. And in addition to that, another one of the ways in which we do that is that our rules or our bylaws are set up for all of our students to matriculate or graduate from university within 4 to 5 years. A couple of our core tenets and how we kind of display our character through our character-based programming are integrity, respect, responsibility, sportsmanship, and servant leadership. Okay. So some facts and figures about the NAIA as an intercollegiate association as well. So I'll kind of localize where the NAIA kind of lies within the intercollegiate sports landscape in the United States. So a lot of international students, when they're pursuing athletic eligibility in the United States, everybody kind of knows the NCAA, which is split up into 3 divisions, with NCAA Division I being at the top, NCAA Division 2 and 3 being kind of that middle or lower tier. And those NCAA Division 2 and Division 3 schools have typically smaller enrollments and smaller athletic budgets. Where the NAIA kind of lies within that system is we are our own separate intercollegiate athletic association in the U.S. We feature all 4-year universities and institutions, and all of those institutions offer partial and full ride athletic aid or scholarships. On an annual basis, our institutions award more than $800 million in athletic aid or scholarships per year across all of our universities. Currently, we have over 77,000 student athletes at all of our institutions, and we feature 250 schools across 48 states in the United States and in Canada and in the U.S. Virgin Islands as well. Those institutions are split up in around 21 athletic conferences across the United States, Canada, and the Virgin Islands as well. And in addition to this, we feature 28 championship sports. And essentially what a championship sport means at the NAIA level is that a vast majority of our institutions sponsor these sports. So some facts and figures about our association and our institutions as well. So the average full-time enrollment, as I've stated, is around 1,400 students at a typical NAIA university. We have universities and institutions that have as many students as around 9 or 10,000, and we have some that have as low as enrollment as around 900 or 1,000 students. 82% of our institutions are private institutions, and 65% of our institutions are faith-based or have some religious affiliation with them as well. And then a smaller percentage of our universities are public institutions. The average amount of sports teams and programs offered at an NAIA institution hovers around 17. The average amount of student athletes on a typical NAIA campus is around 308 students. And then a testament to the high caliber competition that the NAIA offers is that 75% of institutions qualify for some form of a national championship. So this is just a display of where all of our institutions are located within the United States. A cool and very useful resource for students in general that are looking to pursue NAIA eligibility is that you can go on our website and access what is called our interactive member map, where you can search all NAIA institutions by different filters such as enrollment, major and minors offered, sports offered at the institution, enrollment size, religious affiliation, whether the institution is public or private. As an association, we like to consider ourselves innovators within the intercollegiate landscape within the United States. So some of the first or innovations that we have achieved as an association is that we currently hold the longest running men's basketball championship, which was started in 1937. So a cool kind of fact about this is a lot of students that know college basketball in the U.S., everybody thinks of, NCAA, March Madness, the biggest tournament. But the NAIA men's basketball basketball championship has actually been running longer than that. In addition to this, we were the first athletic association to allow HBCUs or historically Black colleges within the U.S. into our association for membership. We were also the first to sponsor men and women's championships at the championship level in the United States as well. And then lastly, a cool stat or statistic is that in partnership with the NFL, we have added women's flag football as an emerging sport that some of our institutions offer to participate as well. So these are some of our 28 national championship sports. This is not an exhaustive list by any means of sports that are offered on our campuses. There are additional sports that some institutions or universities might offer as a club sport or a non-varsity sport, but these are all of our championship sports. In addition to this, we also have what are called emerging and invitational sports. And the difference between these sports and championship sports is that emerging and invitational sports do not have as much participation as championship level sports, and only a certain amount of universities or institutions offer it on campus. So some of these invitational sports that we have currently are men's lacrosse is one. Women's wrestling is on this list, but it has been added as a championship sport very, very recently. Women's beach volleyball is an invitational sport. And as I stated before, women's flag football is an emerging sport for the NAIA as well. So some cool facts and figures about Australians within the NAIA. So since 2019, a little bit over 1,800 Australians have received an eligibility decision through the NAIA Eligibility Center. The top 5 sports for Australian men that are coming in to pursue NAIA athletic eligibility are basketball, soccer, tennis, baseball, and American football. For Australian women, the top 5 sports are soccer, basketball, tennis, cross country, and track and field. On an annual basis, the NAIA Eligibility Center processes around 40,000 eligibility decisions for U.S.-based high school and transfer students, and on an international level for students that are based outside of the United States. The Eligibility Center processes around 5,000 to 6,000 international student eligibility decisions. For Australians, we probably process around 300 to 400, maybe 500 eligibility decisions per year. Now that number has kind of changed given with COVID and all the changes that are associated with that, but that is where that parameter lies for Australian students in general. So for recruiting within the NAIA, so in contrast to the NCAA, there are no calendar restrictions on recruiting of any kind within the NAIA. So NAIA coaches and prospective student athletes can interact with one another via email, via text, via social media for recruiting purposes all throughout the year. In addition to this, we also feature what is called scholarship stacking, for multiple sports scholarships. So if a student is coming in and wanting to participate in multiple sports, so cross country, track, basketball, tennis, in conjunction to their main sport, they can receive an athletic scholarship for not only their main sport, but a secondary sport as well. In addition to this, national letters of intent at the NAIA level, in contrast to some other athletic associations within the United States, are non-binding within the NAIA. So essentially what that means is a student can commit and sign a national letter of intent with an NAIA institution or university, and it is non-binding if the student wants to pursue eligibility and athletic eligibility with another school or another institution that's in another athletic association like the NCAA or the NJCAA, for example. So reasons to consider NAIA institutions. So I've already attested to the high caliber competition, and I'll kind of back that up with some interesting stats. So less than 2% of high school students within the U.S. participate at the NCAA Division I level. From a personal perspective, having gone through the recruiting process, coming out of secondary school or high school for myself, it was very difficult to find a school where I was a good athletic fit and a good academic fit. I was enamored with the idea of going to the biggest school and playing for the best team, when in reality, the best advice that I could probably give you is to find the level that's right for you and the team that's right for you, where you'll be able to compete athletically, but also find a good fit on the academic side at the university level for you. In addition to this, a higher percentage of athletes compete in the postseason at the NAIA level than at the NCAA Division II or Division III level. So 17% of NAIA athletes compete in the postseason. So this can mean a conference tournament or a national championship, while at the NCAA Division II level, 14% of athletes compete in the postseason, and 10% at the NCAA Division III level compete in the postseason. So I'll get into some eligibility criteria for the NAIA, but first I'll kind of compare this to the NCAA. So within the NAIA, there are no core courses required for eligibility. In addition to this, there isn't a sliding scale as well, and students can participate in practice competitions before receiving an eligibility decision. So if your eligibility is not complete before you arrive on your NAIA campus, you're still able to practice with your NAIA team at that point. So before getting into some NAIA eligibility criteria, I will kind of present it to you first in the American education system, and then I'll convert that to the Australian education system for better reference. So to be eligible as a first-year student or a freshman at an NAIA school, a student will need a 2.3 cumulative grade point average coming out of high school or secondary school. With that 2.3 grade point average, a first-year or freshman student is automatically eligible and will not have to meet any other criteria. If a student is below that 2.3 criteria, they will have to meet 2 out of 3 first-year criteria, which the first being would be a 2.0 grade point average. A student would have to also meet a qualifying test score, so an ACT or an SAT score. A qualifying SAT score, I know that SAT is offered here, so a qualifying SAT score is a 970, and a qualifying ACT score would be an 18. The last of that 2 out of 3 criteria is a class rank letter stating that the student has graduated in the top 50 percentile of their class. Now, recognizing that a class rank letter is solely a convention of the U.S. educational system and not the Australian educational system, what that class rank letter is just a letter from a school guidance counselor or administrator stating that the student has finished in the top 50% of their percentile of their graduating secondary or high school class. And like I said, that can come from a school guidance counselor or an administrator, and it just has to be signed and on school letterhead. Now, what this kind of looks like in the Australian education system is a 2.3 grade point average is around a C average. A 2.0 grade point average is also a little bit above a C average. So they're about the same. And proof of graduation for an Australian student that is seeking NAIA eligibility if they reside within the state of Victoria is the VCE, or Victorian Certificate of Education, in conjunction with a statement of results for their VCE as well too. So those are the 2 documents that a student that resides in Victoria would need to submit for NAIA eligibility. So to register with the NAIA eligibility for athletic eligibility, this is our website. So that's playnaia.org. And a student will create a profile, enter their email address, and pay the registration fee. They would then enter all athletic and academic information. And then they would need to send their VCE and their statement of results to the NAIA as well. So how we receive and evaluate those results, that is done through an international academic credential evaluation service that is a sister company of the NAIA. So that department is called NCRED, and all documents will be electronically sent to NCRED for evaluation. And so essentially the NAIA eligibility process is a two-pronged process. So you would register at the Play NAIA site, and then you would also register and send all your educational transcripts and documents to NCRED for evaluation. Potential or prospective NAIA student athletes must have an NCRED evaluation to receive an eligibility decision. So it is compulsory for all students. So the student registration fee for all international students that have graduated high school or secondary school outside the US is around $150 US. Given that the conversion rate for US to Australian dollars is constantly changing, I'll just leave it here in American dollars for those purposes. In addition to this, it is recommended that students register with NCRED and at the Play NAIA eligibility site immediately after high school or secondary school graduation. And all documents should be sent at least 2 months before the beginning of the semester that they're seeking eligibility from. So typically in the United States, school academic years are set up in 2 semesters. So the fall, which normally starts in August, and then the spring, which normally starts in January. So documents would need to be sent in at least 2 months before that, or it is recommended. So this is just a little bit of information about our International Academic Credential Evaluator, NCRED. So essentially what an NCRED evaluation does is it takes the documents or the educational documents and certifies them, and then it compares what level of education a student has earned in their home country, and then compares that to the US system to say what educational standard that student has met. So where students will register for NCRED is just ncredevals.org. Like I said, all documents can be uploaded electronically by a student and with the help of a parent. So this is the pricing for the NCRED evaluation, or the International Academic Credential Evaluation. For first-year students or students that have just graduated from high school or secondary school, they would get a basic evaluation, which is currently priced at $95 American dollars. Now the registration fees for both the NAIA, Play NAIA eligibility site and our NCRED evaluation are constantly up for review. So I'll put an asterisk by both of them because our bylaws and our pricings around them are constantly being reviewed, and they could change, but these are the current pricings for them. So some tips just before I let you go. I would say start early. It is best for potential student athletes to leverage all the resources that they can get and start looking up schools and trying to find that academic fit and that athletic fit where they can go and compete. So it is never too early to start the process of seeking an athletic scholarship and then kind of verifying what the eligibility process is going to be like. In addition to this, I would say that students should register at the same time for the Play NAIA site and the NCRED evaluation site if they're looking to pursue NAIA athletic eligibility. Within my role, the biggest holdup that I see for Australian students and international students in general is that they've done one part of the process and not done the other. And it kind of makes it so that the eligibility process of getting them eligible so that they are able to compete as soon as possible takes longer than necessary. So that is all I have for you guys. I want to thank you guys for having me, and that is all I had for today. So thank you.
1 second. All right. Good Good evening. My name is Michelle Meadows. I am the Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for the National Junior College Athletic Association. And I would like to echo Saeed in thanking Samantha, EducationUSA, and the Carey School for the opportunity for us both to be here and talk about the amazing educational and athletic opportunities that our associations offer. And hopefully through both of our presentations and the different experiences that we had both as student athletes, but now as professionals, you'll come to believe that there is a fit for everyone. And that is one of the biggest pieces of advice that I could offer you is to find that right fit. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the presentation. A little bit about me. I was fortunate to be a Division I student athlete at the NCAA level in the sport of softball. And then I decided to pursue a master's degree in sports administration because I felt a passion for helping pave the way for the future generations that wanted to compete in higher education. I then began to work at an NCAA institution in Virginia. I spent 20 years working in Division I athletics, most recently 4 years as an athletic director at Longwood University. So I've been with the NJCAA about 3 months, and I'm equally proud to be a part of this association and what it stands for. So just a basic overview. The NJCAA is the nationally governing body for all of intercollegiate athletics for two-year colleges in the United States, where the NAIA and the NCAA are two organizations and associations for four-year intercollegiate athletics. The NJCAA is the only association for two-year colleges. We are the second athletic association, second only to the NCAA. We have over 64,000 student athletes participating at over 509 institutions throughout the country in about 44 states. The composition of our association is based on regions, so we have 24 regions. That would be similar to what you would find as conferences at the NAIA or the NCAA. We do have 28 sports, but we also have 3 divisions. We have Division I, II, and III. And some of the differences between the divisions have to do with the amount of athletics aid that is offered, the facilities, and the travel. But across those 3 divisions and the 28 sports that we sponsor, we will be hosting 54 national championships this year. So the mission of the NJCAA is to foster a national program of athletic participation and championships in an environment that supports equitable opportunity for men and women and in alignment with the educational mission of our colleges. We were founded in 1938. We are very proud that we were the first athletic association to incorporate women's athletics in our association. And we have 2 of the longest standing national championships at one site. We don't have the oldest, as Saeed made clear, but our men's basketball championship in Hutchinson, Kansas, which started in 1949, and our baseball championship in Grand Junction, Colorado, that started in 1959. We are continuously trying to find ways to elevate the student athlete experience within the NJCAA, and 2 recent additions is in 2018, we founded the NJCAA Foundation in an effort to secure resources that we can offer scholarships to NJCAA students, as well as establish our first Hall of Fame and honor some of the distinguished alumni that have come through the two-year college pathway. And then in 2019, we had our first national championships televised on national TV with our football and our men's and women's basketball championship on the CBS Sports Network. This past spring, we just signed a partnership with ESPN, where we will have multiple championships either on a linear or ESPN Plus broadcast, and I'll share a few more details later about that. So this slide shows you the 28 sports that we offer, 14 men's and 14 women's, as well as the divisions that offer that sport off to the right. We are proud to be offering for the first time this year a women's beach volleyball championship. But many of the others on this list have long-standing championships in the NJCAA. As Saeed shared about the NAIA, the NJCAA also has a number of emerging sports. Each of these has started some form of competition at the NJCAA level, but is not yet at the status, the number of schools sponsoring to where we were offering national championship. They currently have some form of postseason ending tournament, either through us at the national office or through the national governing body. And that includes competitive cheer, clay target shooting, women's flag football, men's volleyball, and women's wrestling. A lot of people don't know some of the distinguished alumni that have come through the two-year college pathway, so I wanted to be able to share some examples with you. Just to highlight a few, Bryce Harper, who's currently participating in the Major League Baseball World Series with the Philadelphia Phillies, chose the two-year college pathway. Cam Newton actually started at a four-year school, transferred to a two-year school, and then transferred after graduating back to a four-year school, competed in the NFL with the Carolina Panthers and was a Super Bowl MVP. Cheryl Swoops was the first female signed into the WNBA. She started at a four-year college, found that it wasn't the right fit for her, decided to go back home, attended two-year college, build her resume both academically and athletically, and then transferred on to compete at the four-year level. And then just a few more, Bubba Watson, who's a Masters champion on the PGA Tour, and Veronica Campbell-Brown, who is actually an international student from Jamaica and an 8-time Olympic medalist, are just some of our most distinguished alums. At the national office, one of our most significant roles that we play is the execution of our national championships on behalf of our student athletes with both our host sites and the institutions. As I mentioned, we have two of the longest standing events at the same site in baseball and men's basketball. And not only do we have that history, but it is incredible the following that we get for those national championships and what we're continuing to try to build across all of our sports. We had over 120,000 fans attend our Baseball World Series and over 60,000 fans in attendance at our men's basketball championship. We've also tried in recent years to really elevate sharing the story of the NJCAA and the talent that exists through social media platforms. And you can see we got millions of social media impressions through those events. As I said, we hosted 53 championships last year in 19 states. We do televise events in the NJCAA network, but now with the partnership with ESPN, we will have 6 national championships that are on a linear or ESPN Plus broadcast, as well as 103 regular season events as well. Just a few demographics on the community college system in the U.S. Of all U.S. undergraduates, 39% of them are enrolled in a two-year college, and 29% of them are first-generation college students. One of the things that the community college system prides itself on is accessibility for individuals from diverse backgrounds, socioeconomically, racially. And so 60% of our students are graduating with little to no debt. We are the most affordable educational option in the U.S. And we are highly diverse. We have 8% of our students are international. And in other ethnic categories, the community college actually has the higher percentage of students by race than you would find in the four-year system. Within NJCAA schools alone, we have 8.7% of our student athletes are international. Over the past 2 years, we've had 396 Australian student athletes. Very similar to what Saeed shared, we find the majority of those in basketball, men's and women's soccer, softball, and baseball. 52% of those are first-generation college students, and across all student athletes, 46% are non-white. Almost 2,200 are multi-sport athletes, which you don't always find at some of the higher level four-year experiences. And just amongst Australian student athletes, they are pursuing over 26 different academic disciplines, so you can find a variety of academic experiences within the two-year space. As I mentioned, one of the positives of the community college pathway is it is the most cost-effective option in the U.S. Most recently reported, the average annual cost of tuition and fees for the two-year public school is about $3,800 compared to a public four-year school being closer to $11,000. If you incorporate private schools, four-year systems, that cost and average goes up. 56% of all community college students are receiving some form of financial aid. And just within the NJCAA framework, we issued over $100 million in assistance to our student athletes last year. So how can you play in the NJCAA? Similar to what community colleges pride themselves in accessibility is what we at the NJCAA pride ourselves in as well. So there's only 2 thresholds that you have to meet to be eligible as a first-year student at a 2-year college. You must be a graduate with the appropriate and acceptable proof of graduation, and you must be an amateur. We utilize the NCAA's international standard for academic eligibility for student athletes in determining the acceptable forms of documentation for transcripts, 9th grade and above, and the proof of graduation. Unlike the NCAA and not quite as stringent as the NAIA, there is no specific number of core courses, there is no GPA requirement, there is no testing score requirement or a sliding scale. For the state of Victoria, just like the NAIA, the VCE is an acceptable proof of graduation, but also the VCAL is acceptable. What is not acceptable would be an ATAR record. To compete at the NJCAA level, you must, as of your 19th birthday or when you initially enroll in a community college, be an amateur. Student athletes that are amateurs are pursuing athletics for some reason other than monetary gain. Some of the major things that would trigger amateur status issues would be pay for play, paying for a professional or semi-professional team, signing with an agent are some of the major areas that could impact your amateurism. You can always check with a community college coach or an athletic director for more information on that. Similar to the NAIA, there are no recruiting calendar restrictions, so coaches can interact with prospective student athletes both in person, virtually, or electronically as early as 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, whenever is appropriate. What they cannot do is they cannot offer you an official visit or a letter of intent until after the conclusion of your junior or 11th grade year. The NJCAA does use an LOI or letter of intent process, and that is a binding agreement between a student and an institution. It can come with athletics aid. It does not have to come with athletics aid, but each sport has a set number of LOIs that it can issue. And so if a student athlete is offered that LOI, there may be a time period in which you have to decide to sign that in order for a sport and an institution to continue recruiting. Once you have signed that LOI, it is binding. It would cease any and all recruitment from other NJCAA schools. It is in no way binding with NCAA or NAIA schools. If for some reason a student made an inadvertent choice in signing an LOI, you would have to make a request to be released from that LOI from the school. As I mentioned, we are very similar to the NCAA and its divisions and how they apply athletics aid. We do not permit any form of athletics aid at the Division III level. We permit the most amount of athletics aid at Division I, and Division II is right there in the middle. Each institution makes a decision on how much athletics aid it wants to offer within these limits. And even at the same institution, you may find it's different by sports. You may find baseball and softball are awarding the highest amount of athletics aid, and men's and women's soccer are offering only half of what is permissible. So that's just a part of evaluating through the recruiting process. One of the other great benefits of the 2-year pathway is that it is also a continued pathway to 4-year colleges. We had over 5,500 of our student athletes transfer to a 4-year college across both the NCAA and the NAIA. And we looked at recent statistics, particularly in Division I and Division II. There are a number of sports where the number of student athletes participating is as high as 20% that came from the 2-year college pathway. The eligibility rules for transfer will vary between the divisions in the NCAA as well as the NAIA, but there's some great resources through Play NAIA or the NCAA Eligibility Center, and I believe Samantha's going to share this PowerPoint that will have those hyperlinks for you. So why choose the NJCAA? It's a chance to continue competing in the sport that you love for both national championships and national awards. while pursuing a meaningful degree that will help you continue at the 4-year level in a cost-effective manner with a variety of educational opportunities that will offer small classes and individualized instruction while continuing to pursue your dream of a 4-year degree or even playing professionally or at a national level. So before I open it up for Q&A for both myself and Saeed, I do want to encourage you to stay connected with us. You can find us on the various social media sites at NJCAA, or you can visit us at njcaa.org/compete. Similar to what the NAIA offers in its map, we have a member directory where you can go in and you can select which sport, which division, and even which states that you want to have a better understanding of what schools are offering your sport in the states, and it'll allow you to access their website and get contact information to begin that relationship. So really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share more about the NJCAA, and I'm going to open it up for questions for both myself and Saeed, so thank you. I can't see, so you're going to have to speak up. Yeah.
Things off. Just trying to understand the timing of when students would apply. Is it, do they apply in year 11 in Australian terms or at the end of year 12? Generally, what's the sort of path to the application?
Yeah. I know in the junior college system, we have open enrollment, so you can apply early, you can apply late. You're not going to be hindered one way or the other. I know it may be a little bit different within the 4-year space.
But just to help you with timelines, you're doing two things as a student athlete. You're doing the athletic rigor requirement of the US College, and you're doing the recruitment part. So the timeline for the recruitment and talking to coaches, that should probably best start at least in year 10 and start getting that information out to coaches. When you graduate in year 12, you'll graduate in December. And generally what happens is the applications then start rolling in December through to February as a general rule. And then students in Australia have almost a natural gap year because you tend to then apply December when you finish year 12, and then you would start the following August or September. So that helps with timelines. On our website, we have a whole lot of sheets that you can also download, and we'll go through things like checklists, timelines, what to include when you want to be recruited, and those kind of tips as well, and we'll be sending those out to you. So I hope that answers your question, but Saeed, did you want to add to that as well?
That actually covers everything. From an athletic perspective within the NAIA, registering with our site should occur immediately after graduation, and at least all documents should be sent at least 2 months before the first term in which the student is enrolling.
And then a bit like what we say is hang on to the money as much as you want. If you're not communicating with coaches in an NAIA, then you probably wouldn't join their eligibility centre. But if you are looking at coaches at NAIA, they're going to want you to be obviously join that eligibility centre. And equally, you can do that with the NCAA as well. And you can set up a free profile as early as year 9. And then if you're going to be recruited by an NCAA coach, then pay the money a little bit later. And that amount is $150. So the eligibility fees are very similar. And then you don't have to worry about that at the NJCAA.
Yeah, we do not have an eligibility center. You would be required to submit those acceptable proofs of documentation to your school, and they keep that on file for audit purposes.
And I'll probably have Michelle go into this as well. It's really about finding that best fit. I mean, what we want this session to really be about is A, be aware that there's 3 associations. B, be aware of rigor, you know, and some of you might want a small school. Some of you might want a school of 60, 70,000 students. Then that wouldn't be an NAIA school. So again, it's going to depend on where your fit is and where you want to go. As a family, you can do it on your own. And there's some checklists to do, and we can certainly help you with that process. Most Americans are navigating this same system, and they are struggling as well with the process. It's just as an investment of time and those kind of things in trying to find the fit. So don't think that you're sitting here in Australia and it's just hard for you. It's also hard for the Americans as well. But what you need to do as an Australian athlete that becomes a whole lot more challenging is you've got to obviously introduce yourselves to coaches, and that's going to take a little bit more effort because they are unlikely to travel to Australia and see you compete. So how do you do that? You know, there's certainly ways that you can do that as well. Whether that's going to showcases in America, whether that's going to school camps at US colleges that host them in the summertime, that there can be ways to meet coaches. COVID has really hit Melbourne hard in particular. We know that. And so the fact that we're coming out of COVID as well and knowing what is out there, but US colleges are also making it very easy for you to learn about their campuses without going on their campuses. If you are liking schools, sign up to their newsletters, go to their virtual sessions. They are making it a whole lot easier for international students to benefit from that as well.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, and this comes primarily from my experience 20 years on an institutional campus. It's really important for you as a student and a student athlete, along with your family, to really sit and evaluate and ask yourselves the hard questions of what is it that you're looking for in your collegiate experience, both academically and athletically. I sat across the table from numerous recruits and their families, and as much as I wanted every single one of them to choose Longwood, I told them very honestly, you need to go where you fit. I saw way too many student athletes that got enamored by a big name school, but it wasn't the right fit for them because they wanted to compete. They wanted to be on the field or the court, and they went to the big school, but they got absolutely no playing time. And because of that frustration, they just gave it up altogether instead of really honestly saying, you know what, I want to play. Like if I'm going to commit to this and put in the hours, I want to be able to have a chance to be on the field. So maybe I need to look at a lower mid-major at Division I, or maybe it's Division II and Division III or NAIA, or maybe because you need to build your resume both academically and athletically, the option of the two-year pathway is the best fit for you. But also include the financial element. You know, we don't offer as much athletics aid at the NJCAA level, but hopefully I was able to share with you tonight that the costs are so much lower. So we are comparative, and I know the NAIA is as well with NCAA institutions. So I know my personal experience when I went through the recruiting process, I was fortunate to get offers to visit multiple schools. The first school that I visited was what we call a Power 5. It was a high-level Division I institution that the degree carried a lot of weight in the U.S. It competed in a high-level conference. I had every reason to go to that school, but I just knew it wasn't quite the right fit for me. And I ended up going on another visit to another school that was just starting a softball program. So every reason to kind of run the opposite way, like, I don't know how good we're going to be, you know, this is a brand new program. But I wanted to be a part of building something. I felt like I fit academically. I felt like I fit with the kind of the culture of the school. And I'm so glad I did. It was the best experience that I could have asked for. And why I try to be very honest, even though I want everyone to play and compete within the NJCAA, or even when I was at Longwood. So.
I wonder what in terms of ballpark figures, in terms of how much it's going to cost the student athlete to compete, say at JUCO for 12 months, including sort of their accommodation and their food. How much do you need to put aside for that?
It's so hard to pin that down because it'll depend on the institution, how much athletics aid is available, if you qualify for any other sources of aid. I know at the NAIA there's a lot of merit-based aid available, and what their total costs are. So I can't give you even a ballpark. I would say ask those questions as you work your way through the recruiting process and are talking to individual coaches and institutions on what their total costs are and what type of financial aid assistance is going to be offered.
Is accommodation available at most of the college?
So about 40% of our NJCAA schools have on-campus housing. The others have some type of partnership within their local community for like apartment style living.
So just a little bit about the NAIA. So since all of our universities and institutions are 4-year schools, all of them have some sort of on-campus housing. When it comes to the financial aspect, I would also echo what Michelle has said. So a lot of our institutions are private, which normally in the US means that tuition is normally higher. Since we do have 250 schools, just because those institutions are private, doesn't mean that every institution costs a lot. So it varies across our association. I would also echo what Michelle has said in asking coaches and administrators about what the financial aid package will look like from an academic and an athletic perspective to kind of get a good idea of like what you should put aside and what you should prepare for financially.
And just adding to that, a lot of the US colleges will have cost calculators on their websites. So that really helps you have a sense of what some of those costs are. But I'm going to throw it out there because you asked. But basically, sort of tuition, room and board, if you actually costed how much your sons and daughters cost, you'd probably be somewhat horrified. So I think it comes down to sometimes setting a budget and understanding what that is. You know, are they privately insured in, you know, health-wise, and that's going to be covered in the US as well. You know, what's their coaching, what's their cost, what's their meals. So room and board tuition often is about sort of $15,000, throw it out there, give or take. So then you're looking at the tuition costs as well. So most cost calculators will show room and board about $15,000 a year. So that's living and tuition, living and food. But all of those schools will have it on their calculators. And you really can scholarship stack. I mean, we talked to you a little bit about your grades. Your grades become really important in regards to some merit and academic scholarships that you may be accessible to as well. And if you're not that way inclined that you're not going to get academic merit-based scholarships, then see where that sport piece is and then cost shop. You know, where is the best fit? You know, and it can be from any of these 3 associations.
And I think it's important to note too, sometimes there's a misconception that at the NCAA level, they're giving full rides all the time, and that is not true. There are a few sports that are considered what's called head count sports. So if you give $1, you're basically giving a full scholarship. So those sports do, and that's typically like your football and your basketballs. But across the majority of sports offered, there's a limit to the number of scholarships that a team can use, and it's typically a lot less than what the roster size is. So you take a sport like baseball, you compare NCAA Division I to NJCAA. NCAA Division I has 11.7 full scholarships they can offer to a roster of about 35. The NJCAA has 25 LOIs. So if a school wanted to offer 25 full scholarships, they could. Now, each school has to make their own decisions in that, but that's why it's important to do your homework, to have tough conversations with schools and coaches you're talking with. And that's true for domestic students as much as it is for international students.
So to kind of attest to the financial aspect, so from my personal experience as a student athlete, I competed at the NCAA Division III level, which similar to the NJCAA Division III level, offers no athletic aid. So from an educational standpoint, the only way that I was actually able to afford the university that I went to and thankfully was able to compete at was through academic merit-based scholarships and grants. So without those and without having the right grades, essentially I would not have been able to go to the university that I attended. So just for frame of reference.
Is there a difference in perception between 2 and 4 year degrees once complete? I mentioned you can't jam 4 years of work into a 2 year degree.
Yeah, I would certainly say there is. I don't know if it's always a true and accurate perception. I think it's all about what are you trying to accomplish. An associate's degree is incredibly valuable, especially if you're looking to go ahead and pursue that bachelor's. You're going to cut your costs those first 2 years pretty significantly, and the coursework that you're taking is going to meet a lot of what is called general education requirements in the 4-year system, which is kind of those liberal arts, an English, a comm, a math, a science. You're going to have all of that taken care of. In addition, we have student athletes that the 2-year pathway is the start and end of their collegiate athletic experience. And they choose to pursue a trade certificate. And I'll be honest, there are some students graduating with trade certificates and getting jobs making a lot more money than someone getting an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree right out of college. So it really is all about how you look at it and what you're looking for. But I do think there is a perception, and that's why I appreciate opportunities like this to kind of help give more edges to that perspective.
Trevor?
If you did a 2-year degree and then moved across to 4-year college in a similar field, would you get 2 years of credit? Would you, or would it depend?
It all depends on the curriculum. But I think what you're mostly going to see is that it's going to take care of the general education piece. There might be a couple introductory class, let's say we're pursuing an associate's in business. There might be some of those initial marketing or accounting classes. And then you would do your higher level courses at the 4-year institution.
But the system does pride itself on a 2+2. So you're basically getting the 2 years there and finishing off your 2 years at a 4-year college.
Yeah, one of the experiences I had with a student athlete that I carry with me, and I carry a lot, but I had a student athlete at Longwood when I was at a 4-year institutional campus, who the only way for her to get her footing in the door of pursuing her dream of competing in Division I was to go the community college route. So she attended Trinity Valley Community College in her home state. She made the most of it academically and athletically. That opened the door for her to become a 4-year student athlete at Longwood. And because of the COVID situation, she not only got her bachelor's degree, but she got her master's degree paid for as well. But she identified her passion, and that's to coach. And so she is now coaching at the NCAA level. And that is, how do I want to describe it? That is one of the purest elements of what the junior college experience can be. We have a hashtag that says opportunities start here, and that's just one example.
You speak a lot about engaging with the coaches very early on and get recruiting. So what's the very, very first step with identifying who these coaches are and what the right communication channel to start corresponding with them is?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So at the NAIA level, like I've kind of stated, there are no recruiting restrictions. So you can begin talking to coaches whenever you think is appropriate, from anywhere from grade 8 all the way up to 12. You can do that by text. You can do that by email. You can do that by social media, what you may have. I would say the first kind of step, and maybe Michelle can speak to this as well, is one, just reaching out to coaches at prospective schools to see if the athletic fit is right, and then also trying to see if the academic fit is going to be right as well too. So you can reach out to coaches starting in those grades with just film. It can be a quick introduction to coaches, but at least at the NAIA level, there aren't any restrictions. But normally the first thing that I kind of see is just reaching out to coaches, and then also looking up showcases for potential coaches in universities where those coaches might attend that showcase where your student athlete might be performing to, and you can get into contact with coaches that way as well.
Okay, but looking at the school on the internet and looking up, let's say we're looking at baseball, we're looking up on the internet for that school and basically just looking up baseball, who is the baseball coach there, and there'll be an email address on there that you can start communicating with?
Yeah, so normally all coaches have like an email and a phone contact as well. Some coaches might not have that, and you can get in contact, if they don't have that, you can get in contact with an athletic director at that university as well too.
Okay.
And let's go back to baseball. So you're talking baseball as that's your sport. So how you present your stats are going to be really important for baseball, because they're going to look at that really specifically. And if you can look at the stats on the college website and see what those stats are looking like to see if you're comparable. I don't know what position you are. I don't know if you're a pitcher. If you're a pitcher and you have to be a left-handed pitcher, you're probably pretty good. But again, if you're obviously some of those other positions, then it depends how you present yourself to those coaches. So I would make sure if you're approaching coaches, and we again have an email worksheet on our website. This is an email example. Use it and have your own style come through. and sending it to coaches, but making sure it's meaningful. If you approaching them in year 9 and you don't have footage and you don't have highlights and you don't have a coach's reference letter as part of that attachment, then maybe that's not quite the right approach, because then they've got to prove how good you are. So if you've got a coach's reference as part of that, and the coach can talk to a coach and say, hey, is this kid really as good as he is? You know, where do you think he's going to develop, or what's going on? So to put yourself on the radar becomes really important. And I would say, again, not all the associations have timelines. The NCAA has a timeline. So most college coaches cannot approach you until the middle of year 11, but that doesn't mean you can't be approaching them. And I would say if you don't start doing it, building it by sort of year 10, the start of year 11, you may miss the boat. Now that doesn't mean it's not going to be impossible. It just needs to mean you need to work against those timelines, because it takes time to build a relationship.
I would just add to coaches at every level are incredibly busy. So I would try to keep your communications short, succinct. If you're providing a skills video or highlight film, make sure they're short of your best clips early on, because if they start to watch it and it drags on, they're just going to hit delete. A couple other tidbits, make sure you spend time in the grammar and the setup of your email. I've seen a lot of students, or heard stories of students too, that are cutting and pasting the same email template and they're forgetting to change the coach's name. So really take the time. I mean, that's a surefire way for them to hit delete. Take your time, make it meaningful in order to open that door and begin developing that communication relationship.
Because if the first line of the email is "Dear Coach," you're probably going to go in the delete bin, because the coach has gone, you've fished and you've sent this out to 4,000 colleges. You don't even know my name. So that's why it's really important to start building the spreadsheet, put some colleges in it. Again, we recommend some fields on how you can fill that in, and it's from our website. So we've got a whole lot of cheat sheets to help you with that process, and we'll make sure that we get those to you as well.
I know in our sport there's a number of showcase invitations that are coming out more and more, almost like it's a business fundraising type thing. And so it's extremely important from here, with the cost involved in that, to get some sort of understanding as to which of these showcases are relevant to coaches in your sport and which ones are just money grabbing exercises. Families can't do that twice a year, every year between year 9 and year 12. So getting some feedback from coaches at that stage to say, well, this is relevant to me, or this isn't, really helps.
I think the good ones too that are transparent will list the schools where coaches come from to assess talent. So I think that can be a good indicator that this would be a worthy showcase to attend.
And normally if there's an annual showcase that happens over and over, normally coaches might attend the same showcase on an annual basis too. Yeah.
What your opinion is, a lot of agents and things going around now, more so than ever. And there's programs and there's all sorts of other sort of things for setting up these one set of goals, and with all different sports, I assume. What's your opinion of all those sort of agents and programs? Some of them are quite expensive. You don't really know what they all promise you everything.
I'll start. I think it all depends on who's the agent or who's the person serving as an advisor. I think there are some individuals that know the system, that they have relationships, they know how to create a skills video that's going to catch the eye of a coach. But I think there are a lot of folks that are just using it as an economic opportunity to take advantage of families that feel like there's just so much information out there, I don't even know where to start. I would highly vet whoever you may be considering and ask about what ties they have to actual coaches and institutions. What success have they had in actually making that connection to which it's secured a participation opportunity. But unfortunately, I agree with you. I think there are a lot of people out there, not just here in Australia, but even in the U.S., that are taking advantage of families.
Yeah, and taking off my NAIA hat and putting on just my regular citizen hat, like Samantha and Michelle said, it is a step that a lot of U.S. and international students are using to work with recruiters, but it isn't necessary. There are thousands of U.S. and international students that are finding universities every year without using the recruiting services as well too. So that's just a small tidbit from me on that.
I think there was a hand up right around here. There you are. Yeah.
I have two questions, really. Do the US colleges have a deferral system? So, I mean, obviously, given how our VCE system finishes here in Victoria, results come out mid-December. You don't make that 2-month requirement for the start of the, I can't remember the date, the January semester, basically. So can you defer through to the August, or can you defer through to the following January?
At our level, yes, you can. Either one.
Yeah, at the NAIA level, you can too. We see specifically international students that start in the spring semester, so that is in the middle of the academic year, or you can defer until the next school year, which would start in the fall, which would be August also.
But schools, adding to that, schools can also provide your transcripts with a pre-read or predicted scores, and they get reviewed by US colleges even without US colleges having their final, students having their final results as well. So that's possible still. And don't forget, we finish in December, so we have a natural start in August. So that becomes easy to meet this timeline in regards to the NAIA. So
the second question that I had is, we've spoken to a couple of Ivy League universities, because I noticed that the NJCAA doesn't offer my son's sport. I'm not sure if the NAIA does.
What sport?
It's rowing.
We do not. Simply put, rowing is obviously an expensive sport, and we found that a lot of our schools just don't have access to the resources, whether that's like financially and the equipment and the kind of standards necessary to offer it. So no, we don't, unfortunately.
So this is probably a question for you, Samantha, is that they talk about means testing of us here in Australia. Can you just unpack that for me a little bit? Like, obviously it's got to be converted.
Yep, so I'm going to unpack it a little bit, and I hope you heard the question. So this family is looking for a rowing scholarship, and ask for all your assets, your wages, all those kind of things, which is an incredibly private document between you and the institution, and they will review that documentation. And if they give funding for international students, they will review that and say, you have this much asset or this much money, we think you should provide this much, we'll provide that much for your son. Are you okay with that? And if you're okay with that, then you can make the decision and go to that institution. So that's why it's really important when you put colleges on your list to look at what their costs are and to see that they actually can do funding for international students, because there are limited opportunities for funding for international students. Does that answer your question?
And just one tidbit, the Ivy League does not offer athletics aid, so just something for you to know.
Yeah, the Ivy League are needs-based financial aid schools, so they do not give sports scholarships. And they're very clear with that, but sometimes people don't realise it. So that's why I would look at what those opportunities are. And sometimes in working with institutions, if they are serious about your son and daughter, you can also ask for a pre-read, as in you can give them your financial documentation and they can give you a guide of what you might get. And some institutions will do that for you.
A couple have actually said that they don't do pre-reads. Is that just an institution choice?
It is. So that makes the choices and doing a little bit more homework even more clear for someone like you. But great question.
I do want to take I want to take one step back real quick to the question that was asked at the top. We did hear in one of the other sessions about potentially a trend of it being communicated that you need to finish your high school career in the States to really have an opportunity to be recruited. I will definitively say I do not believe that is the case. So, but to your question.
You used the term scholarship stacking before, so that was like a 2x2. So in the process of going to NJCAA, how then do you apply for the 4-year? Like, what's the process in between?
So there are a lot of Division 1, 2, and 3, and I'm assuming NAIA coaches that follow the NJCAA and actively recruit off of those rosters. So they would identify, a coach would typically identify a student athlete. You can do the same thing of reaching out to a four-year coaching staff and saying you have interest, and they'll have obviously a resume and portfolio that they can access through, NJCAA schools, and then start that conversation and the discussion regarding any athletics aid available, what's the admission standards. They will request up-to-date transcripts, most likely of the junior college, potentially of high school or secondary school education, to gauge admissibility at the four-year school.
And just the other thing I would add about transcripts, if you've never come through EducationUSA or you're working with a school that supports the pathway, you tend to upload transcripts that are like 50 pages of grades. Please don't do that. Work with your schools who are very happy to, in most cases, translate that and put it on a one-page document. So you'll still have to provide the 50 pages on record if you officially get into the school, because I'll need to make sure that it's all true, but work with your schools to have a one-page transcript. And if you go back to your schools and this is all foreign to them, you need to realize that this is not their core business. They are doing their best to support and help. But if you need some support, then you can connect them with us, and we are more than happy. We work with schools all the time, and we can provide templates that they can use as a base to help you with that as well. So last call for questions. It looks like we're nearly exhausted, which is great. I think it's been a great opportunity to have your questions asked. I know that this is probably going to start a little bit more thinking, and that's great. We will send after event emails to you. We will provide the PowerPoints that have been delivered as well, but we will give you a whole lot of our resources and start unpacking those. And we will continue to run programs in the school holidays, probably in January, to unpack some more of this information. So we'll organise some of those as well if that is of interest, and we'll keep communicating with you as well. But closing comments from Saeed and Michelle?
Yeah, I just want to thank the Carey School and Education USA for having me, and you guys for coming out today. So I'll have some goodies over here that has all the information on flash drive, and I'll have my card over here as well. But thank you for having me.
And just to echo Saeed, thank you